Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we are going to talk about that overtime thriller with the one and only Sean Salisbury. He joins us from Houston, Texas. Sean, let me first of all welcome you and then give you my take. A lot of people are talking today about a lot of the players on the 49ers didn't know the overtime rules. That doesn't mean a damn thing. It wouldn't have changed the way they played, all right? So I find that a little hard to believe, but again, that didn't dictate what happened at overtime. Personally, I would have deferred in that situation. But again, I don't think that's why San Francisco lost the game. Sean, San Francisco lost the game because they missed an extra point, which changed everything. And they misplayed a punt, which resulted in a Kansas City touchdown. To me, that's why they lost the game.
Grant, it's like you and I were on the same radio show this morning on my show because first of all, let me just get rid of this. That isn't the reason they lost. You give Mahomes too many chances and you can't get a stop then because their defense was brilliant for the majority of the game. They really were. Both defense, I mean, those three straight 3-and-outs that Kansas City's defense issued to San Francisco, what a hidden gem of the game, right? It's like Kyle got out of his comfort zone, which he's done way too much in big moments of doing what they do, even though they still ran at 31. They had 70 offensive plays like they were in college, but still couldn't. You kick 3 field goals, you missed an extra point, and how that thing worked out the way it did. It's about 6 or 8 plays that changed it. But you make a great point. That wasn't the reason they lost. Now, right, you may have, after the coin toss, unlike the opening part, because the 49ers come out of the chute in a regular game, they score about almost 60% of the time on opening drive. So I get that.
Yep.
But them not knowing the rules, and I think a lot of us get caught up in the Super Bowl hype and the party. I wasn't even thinking about it until after the coin toss. I'm thinking the rules have changed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just shocked that players and the coaching staff, that if they didn't know it, why? Okay, even before you run out there, hey, remember, if we get this toss, defer or what have you, rules have changed, guys. Even if we score a touchdown, they still get a chance to match the first time, unlike the regular season. So it's not the reason they lost. The reason they lost is they hit a couple extra plays down the stretch. You're right, a blocked extra point, and the field goal kicker was brilliant. It was just that one, and then you can't muff a punt, and you give Mahomes the ball in the red zone, a play or two later, throw a touchdown pass.
Next
and
play.
You still, it's right. It was the very next play. So you get beat by a guy who lives in January and lives for those moments. And Purdy for 3 quarters was the better quarterback in the game.
No question.
And then, he's not a better player, and then Mahomes clicks in, and you cannot give him that many opportunities. He's going to get you. And San Francisco just doesn't have a flair for the closing ability. They're a great setup team, but they just can't quite close, which bummed me out because I couldn't have rooted any harder. I love Andy Reid, and he's a legend, but I couldn't have rooted. And I know we have fatigue, but they're that good, and goodness creates fatigue. I couldn't have rooted any harder for Brock Purdy and for those guys to win just for all the nonsense they're going to have to hear all off season.
Sean, I don't think enough was made of this. I thought the injury to Dre Greenlaw really changed the game in favor of Kansas City.
Highly underrated. Well, maybe it's not underrated. I'm with you. And how miserable that poor guy must be.
Oh, my God.
Going in there. I mean, he's one of the better players in the league, and his ability to run. Yes. He is one of the – matter of fact, going in, he may have been, if he wasn't first, he wasn't third, about keys to that defense and taking away certain parts of it because he is an explosive talent and he's really gifted. And to run out there on the field with that enthusiasm, and he was playing the first couple series, it was all over the place. And then to have that happen, I can't imagine what his offseason is going to be like, all that work you put in.
Oh, my gosh.
If you're going to get hurt in the field of play, we all know that happens, and you can accept it. It's hard to accept running on the field to come out for another series.
He might not even be on a team next year. He's a free agent. I mean, that may be it for him.
Blow out your Achilles. And you didn't even, and you weren't, it wasn't during the time of play.
Terrible.
What a horrible, I felt horrible for him, but losing him was be the equivalent of losing like a Deebo Samuel on the offensive side of the ball.
What the Kansas City Chiefs defense did in this postseason is remarkable to me because I didn't see that defense during the regular season. And yesterday, they completely took George Kittle out of the game. That was amazing to me.
Yeah. Grant, interesting thing. This is the worst offensive talent personnel-wise that the Chiefs have had since Mahomes has been there. And worst, isn't it? They're the Super Bowl champions. Should I say it? So calling them the worst they've had, it doesn't really seem fair. But it's the least talented offensive unit they've had. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
the most gifted defense that they've had. Their back end is fantastic.
Oh,
And
wow.
Chris Jones is a game record. I mean, they are really – they're the reason Kansas City got to the playoffs.
Yes.
They are the reason without – no matter – I don't care if that alien talent Mahomes, if the Chiefs play average – if they're average all year long, we don't get to see Mahomes in the playoffs this year. They would not have made the playoffs, I don't think. It would have been close or an early out. But what happened was they played their ass off during the season, and then come postseason, they hung in there and played great. And then Mahomes' offense stepped up. They stepped up during the postseason and looked more like the Kansas City Chiefs offense that we're used to seeing. So best defense he's ever been on since he's been there the last 7 years, and 6 as a starter. And then offensively, it just goes to show you, Grant, you and I have talked about it. What's one of the number 1 or 2 trait you have to have? A quarterback that elevates the room. It didn't matter. Mahomes didn't care if it was Rice. He didn't care if it was Valdez-Scantling. He made them better players in clutch moments because you know what they all think? He's going to rise up in January and February, so trust him. And it showed by performance by Hardman doing his thing on that sprint right flat for the score. But their defense, and they will never get the credit because Andy's on that squad and so is Mahomes. I'm going to tell you, the defense is the reason the Kansas City Chiefs got to where they were. And then Mahomes just did what he normally does, and that's beat you in the postseason.
Maybe their biggest series was right after the Mahomes interception where San Francisco was almost in field goal range, and they actually lost yards. Part of that was a 5-yard penalty. But that was, to me, as big as any stop during the course of a game because the Niners could have gone up by 2 possessions there, and the Chiefs just shut them down and forced a punt.
That's such a great point, Grant. Think about the quick change turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City makes and it was an awful throw by Mahomes, but it didn't affect him. It was a bad decision, but it didn't affect him the rest of the way. It's like, okay, I know I'm not going to make that throw again. But the Niners couldn't go in and score a touchdown. On the quick change turnover on special teams, the Chiefs did. So you think about the missed extra point, and that's 8 points difference in a game right there. You lose by, and then the obvious the overtime stuff. But while field goals are nice, guess what you can't do? You can't kick 3 field goals against Mahomes and change field goal and expect you're going to win a lot of times, even though Moody could have been the MVP of the game had the 49ers won and he had to kick another field goal because he was bombing them from long range, but you can't miss those. And real quick, Grant, about that. The Kansas City Chiefs and the way Mahomes, even when it looks for a minute there, I thought the Kansas City Chiefs were going to get run for a while. When it started out 10, and I thought the defense looks too good for San Francisco. They look off. And for him to shift the narrative during the game, I was really impressed with just another level of Mahomes. Even when he's not at his best, he always does something to take it to another level. And Andy has them in such great control. They're not done winning Super Bowls. It just gets tougher every year because there's so many good quarterbacks in the AFC. And what a finish by Mahomes again, man. We all need that DNA.
I want to pick your brain on this, and I don't know if you saw it. It would have been on at noon your time about the old NFL Today with Brent Musburger and Phyllis and Jimmy the Greek. I thought it was one of the best hours of TV that I've seen in a long time.
Again, yep, I agree.
But you know what that's like because for many years you were in that scene at ESPN. And you worked with John Clayton and Tom Jackson and Chris Berman a lot. And you were always interacting on studio shows. So you have a very good idea about the pressure and the stress and everything that goes with putting on a show like that. Again, I don't know if you watched that show yesterday, but it was phenomenal. But people that watch these shows think it's so easy. They don't understand about the inner workings, and you do. It's not a picnic all the time.
And I could make the argument now. You love the shows that you grew up with. We all do, right?
Yes.
People know the Howie Long stuff, and now it's like, well, Howie's been there, same haircut, same look, doing great work for 25 years, right?
Right.
And now we've got the new, we're Nate Burleson, who's done a great job bringing that energy to CBS, and the old school, new school mix. But when I grew up, it was Phyllis George and Irv Cross and Jimmy the Greek and Brent Musburger, and I can just tell you in live TV. Live TV doesn't mean you're 2 seconds late getting to break or to a highlight. Live TV means you got to hit your brakes on time. You don't get to fix it. And I know They do that now too. But they didn't have all the bells and whistles they got now to get him in and all the graphics. And it was, kind of finding out about yourself and how good you are on the run. It was the best pregame show ever, in my opinion.
Yep,
it was
I
the
agree.
original.
Ever.
And to me, and I think that even you heard Jim Nantz talk about it. I think the James Browns, Jim Nantz's, those guys who are that traffic cop that sit there and make sure they're getting in and out. And Ernie
Supermen.
Johnson,
They're
are
Supermen.
they ever? Because the guys talking all have egos. They all want to talk over the other guy. And James Brown, who's brilliant at it, they all recognize how brilliant Brent Musburger was. And Musburger does belong in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
As a football guy and
Yes.
the voice, you are looking live. That's how you started every Sunday.
Yep.
And he'd throw out to Irv Cross here and this person there. And it was a brilliant mix. That was a Hall of Fame show. And they are brutally difficult because you're coming and going and in and out of thrown out to the stadium. Come back. Let's get what this guy says. Jimmy Greek's up on the board and the the check marks that they had. I friggin' love it. And I think Brent Musburger, I got him listed. He's to me, he's such a legend. He's an icon. I'm a huge fan. Brent was, and what people don't know, and Ryan's saying it now, Brent Musburger was maybe, aside from the TV executive, like who started the Monday Night Football? Roone Arledge, right?
Yeah, Roone Arledge at ABC.
Aside from Roone Arledge and maybe one or two more, Brent Musburger may have been the most powerful man in football, period.
He was Mr. CBS.
You're damn right he was.
Mr. CBS.
Yes, he was.
I know Mike.
He would be making $20 million, $25 million bucks
a
year if he was in his prime now with what he was doing then. That's how good he was.
I've talked to Mike Francesa about what that show was like. He was one of the producers. But think about that show. They incorporated basically the first female broadcaster ever in Phyllis George, the first African-American on a national stage like that in Irv Cross. And, gambling talk was taboo back then. And they went right to Jimmy the Greek. That show, and what was so far ahead of their time, that when you look back on it, you're like, wow, what insight they had.
And Grant, I'm so glad you brought this up. You know how we're always trying to, I love our chemistry. On those shows, you're trying to create chemistry. It's guys from all different walks, like you said, whether it's Irv Cross, who is African-American, the taboo part of gambling, which was, what is Jimmy the Greek doing here? Brent Musburger but traffic, and then Phyllis George, who was so good at it. And a female, all those things that people are saying, look at the pioneers now. Hell no, they were pioneers first. With Irv Cross and with Phyllis George. Listen, man, it was, to me, the chemistry on that show was epic. And even when they disagreed, and Jimmy the Greek you couldn't tell. Jimmy the Greek hit it, and he had a good sense of humor, and Musburger knew it all. And for those who didn't get a chance to watch Brent early in his career when he was doing that, then started calling games, if you ever needed to know if a kick mattered, I assure you, Brent made sure that you knew. I friggin' love Brent Musburger and always have.
The best.
Yep.
The best. All right, I want to get back to the game. You got Kyle Shanahan now, offensive coordinator in Atlanta, up 28-3, lost. Double-digit lead in his first Super Bowl when the Niners lost to the Chiefs. Double-digit lead yesterday. Like, he's the head coach, and I get it. Can you fault the way he coached the game yesterday in any way? Anything stick out to you?
I thought that he went away from, even though they had 31 rushes in the game, and Grant, I'm big on attempts.
Yes.
I am. I love attempts, but Mahomes kind of ruins everything for everybody on the opposing team just because he's a different breed, and Andy Reid's a brilliant player. The two best play callers maybe in the NFL, and McVay's pretty good. We're on stage last night for different, Andy and
good point.
And Kyle. They really were. And Kyle's unfortunate. He's drawn Brady and Mahomes twice.
Right.
Well, what's next? Montana going to come back in his prime and beat him too? Let's face
it's like
facts.
in the NBA Finals against Michael Jordan. You're not going to win.
And then we're going to get a day off. I have to play Larry Bird. Oh, okay, great. You're screwed. So that's one thing. I think at times, Grant, and pressure. I'm not saying he choked. And I do think guys do, but I think what happens is, at times you can get a little too cute. Grant, we see it at all levels. Guys, oh man, I'm going to do this, and you get a little too cute. I loved the way he went about the game, the double pass, and the way I thought his game plan going in, that Kyle's on tonight, right?
Yeah.
But I think there was a part in the middle of the game that gets hidden and maybe late that he got away from what they do great. I can't in three and outs run the ball once or twice, right? Now think about last Super Bowl he was in. Running the ball. Guess what they did? They threw it 11 times in the fourth quarter with a lead, and
Yeah.
Jimmy was 3 of 11.
Yeah.
They dropped back to pass. You remember Matt Ryan taking that sack and laying the ball on the ground when he was a coordinator with a 28-3, and they blew it. Listen, he doesn't have the ball in his hand, and Kyle is a great play caller. When I hear people say you got to get rid of him, would you just stop it? That's how people think. Guy's been to 3 straight NFC championship games, but here's the thing. I do believe you should evaluate it. I do believe you got to look and say why. I'm not looking for the fact that I need to know why we keep getting to this situation with double-digit leads and can't hold them. I think Kyle needs to look in the mirror. The football team needs to, because what are we saying about the quarterbacks? We say it about Allen. We say it about Prescott. Yeah. We said it about quarterbacks in the past. So if we're going to give you all the money and the compliments when things are going good, and we're going to tell the quarterback, well, you're a January guy, you can't get to February, then shouldn't we be saying that? But the difference is Kyle's been to February 3 times now. Yeah. So he knows how to get you there, but there's a disconnect. I thought a little bit in the game. I didn't think it was I thought he called a good game. But I would have gone down. The oar in my hand would have been McCaffrey. He would have touched the ball even more.
Yep.
I think it disappeared a little bit. I would have liked to see him. Plus, you know what that does, Grant? Even if you go 3 and out running the ball, and I'm a quarterback, I'm greedy, I want to throw it, is that clock keeps ticking.
Yeah.
And you don't give Mahomes that extra time or two. And hell, we wouldn't even be talking if they kicked the extra point because the game would have ended up 20-19. It's crazy stuff, man.
I wish you were in the booth instead of Tony Romo. And listen, I know Tony's a great
guy.
So do
I.
I know. Yeah, you'd be making $1 million a game. He just wears on me, Sean. And I for me, and again, I'm only speaking for me. It's very subjective. A lot of people love him. A lot of people don't. He's just too much for me, Sean. He's just too much.
I'll tell you what it is. It's overbearing.
Thank you.
It's a
overbearing.
And when he first got in, we love and listen, I love Tony. I do.
I do too.
But we can talk about it however you want. Tony lost fastball. For some reason, he either got to the point where he took it for granted. He became a star. I knew he was preparing. Now you put him and Greg Olsen next to each other, and right now it's not close. Olsen's because he teaches, and Tony used to teach. Now Tony gets caught up into the inside jokes with Jim and
terrible.
And I don't mind a little singing and you need to have fun, but Tony's gotten to the point. I almost feel like he wants to be bigger than the game, and when you get to that point, I prefer understated with energy and passion as opposed to overstated with you figure you can cover all that where you can take the chicken shit and turn it into chicken salad. But when it's chicken shit, it's still chicken shit. I'm not saying Tony. I'm talking about when you're not bringing out the best. We asked the players to bring out the best. Tony was so good early on at preparing, and I'm not even talking about the prediction of the play. I'm just talking about the grind of telling me what happened in the secondary. Teach me. And he was great at it. And I don't know what happened, but I think he got a little bit better the AFC Championship game. But I almost feel like Tony, he gets so much energy that he doesn't let it breathe, and Nance does, and they're buddies. Yeah. And it feels too crowded with just 2 men, and that's because Tony, and he interrupts Jim in the middle of
he's hurt Nance. He is hurt Nance. Nance is not as good as a play-by-play announcer since he's been with Tony. It's hurt Nance. There's no question about it.
That's exactly right. So I think that Tony should be getting better. I don't think he has, Grant, for whatever reason. And that's not mean. It's not personal. It's just me. Forget the guy. I'm just listening to the broadcast and watching. I can tell you this. If he's making $18 million a year, then Greg Olsen should be making 30 as we speak.
Yep. I could save CBS a lot of money because I would call them up and go, hey, my buddy Sean said he'll do it for $100K a game, okay? And you can save you millions of dollars.
Matter of fact, I'll go one better. If they'll pay, they pay for the flights. If they'll just give me one season of calling them. You don't have to pay me the first season, although I wouldn't tell them that. And if I don't come out with let it breathe and teaching better, then because Tony knows football and he's an enthusiastic guy. I just need him to get back to toning it down. I want his energy, but I also want his energy at times. You don't need to talk in between every play.
Yeah.
Sometimes just let it go. There was only one John Madden, and there'll only going to be one John Madden. But I think Tony needs to take a step back and reevaluate his energy. You can make great points without having to talk over the broadcast. Jim needs to take him aside as his buddy and give him some tough love because Tony does know football, but he's not teaching me like he used to. And yes, I'd do it for $100,000 a game in 6 ways to Sunday. Matter of fact, I'll walk to the site and I'll leave on Mondays, get there by Sunday. We'll be good to go. There you go.
I'm going to put you in the general manager seat of the Chicago Bears, assuming that you've decided that you don't want to move forward with Justin Fields. Who's the quarterback you're taking coming up in the draft? Who's your number one guy?
Grant, at this is the time right now when I start to read it all and start to watch tape of the top 6 or 7. Like I usually choose 5 games a year of those guys and break them down. And I'm about to get started now that the Super Bowl's over. But I can tell you this. I think Caleb Williams is a great playmaker. But there's things that tell me I'm seeing too much. I'm just talking about that tell me that he'll be great winning 8 or 9 games a year or 7. I need somebody. I don't know if he's going to grab the room by the throat without a football in his hand. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Then I don't want him. I'm going a different direction.
I think, listen, Grant, he's going to come in. He's going to make some plays like you saw in college. People are going to trip out. They're going to say, what a play.
Yep.
Can he consistently make the simple play? And can he elevate everybody? And is there a trust factor that when he walks in, everybody wants to be around Caleb Williams? Or when everybody's wearing green, does he have to wear a brown shirt? When everybody's wearing blue cleats, does he have to wear green ones? And this has come from an SC guy who thinks he's so gifted, but gifts take you so far. And then the intangible part and leadership and maximizing the building. If you asked me this question 3 months ago, I'm giving you an unequivocal. He is going to be the first pick of the draft. Just depends on where.
Yep.
I'm to the point now, just from this, and I'm going to go. I know what his X's and O's are going to bring. I can't fix the other part of it. I feel like there's a disconnect between him and the room. Does that make sense? And maybe it's not fair.
Ryan Leaf, like?
Yeah. But I even think
but did you say? When you say that, I'm thinking Ryan Leaf. Can you give me an example? I
think the disconnect may be the disconnect of I don't have to do what everybody else is doing because I'm better than everybody else. Does that make sense? And I'm sure he'll work. But
so the word is entitlement.
Maybe that's entitlement. I know that winning's everything, but as long as I'm kicking ass, I can that I'm okay with it. I don't want that. I want a guy that when you're playing miserable, you still find a way to win. And I want a guy that if you win and you played miserable, you can still be okay and rally around. And maybe I'm way off.
Okay.
3 months ago, I would have said, if you don't take Caleb Williams, you're an idiot. 2 months ago. But there's hints of stuff that bug me about, and I'm a big locker room guy, and I think those things matter. I'm going to tell you right now, I would trade him away for 8 picks, and I would keep Justin Fields. He's shown me enough potential that with the right coach, I think Justin Fields, and if not Justin Fields, I'm still looking into Drake May. I'm still looking into Jaden Daniels as well. As far as the physical skill set, there's nothing Caleb Williams can't do.
Right.
Special is, do you do what Mahomes did? Can you do what Burrow's done? When you elevate, when people just know that you got their back.
Can you do what C.J. Stroud did?
Yep. And I may be way off. That's exactly right. I may be way off on this, Grant. I'll say on this part of it. You know how 10 or 12 or 15 of the fellas will go out after a game and have a beer and get something to eat?
Yep.
Or a training camp?
Yep.
My question is, when they're all going to one place, will he just kind of go off by himself somewhere else? Now, I know people say that doesn't matter. I think
it matters. It matters.
It matters to me. I've watched the greats, McMahon and Warren Moon. Great ones do it. It's not like you have to go out and drink all the time, but I think players want to know that you're one of them. Maybe that's the way to describe it. I'm not sure the rest of the team feels like he's one of them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I can't put my full finger on it. I hope I'm wrong. But right today, I'm not secure enough in knowing that he is going to dominate the building with the way he goes about his business. On the field, he'll be spectacular. I'm not so sure he'll get buy-in from every player on that team. And I can't win Super Bowls without buy-in. I just can't. So right now, I'm not sure I'm taking him first if I'm the Bears.
Let me tell you something. If I'm going out with the fellas, that includes Jim McMahon, and Jim then decides he's not going, I'm not going either. It's not worth my time, okay?
Yeah. If Jim's not going, the world ended, okay? That I can tell you. Something happened where Mac either Mac decided that, you know what, he's flying to Mars, or Mac decided that if Mac doesn't go, it ain't a party. And if Mac's there, your ass wants to be there. And I got news for you, being in the locker room with him. Players would well, Jimmy Mack's going. Oh, okay. If it's Jimmy Mack, wives letting him go because just hanging around Mack with a cold beer, even if you did anything wrong. If Mac's going, you want to go. If he's not, stay your ass home. There's no doubt about it.
Hey, you're the best, buddy. Thank you very much.
I love you, my man. I'm passionate about that. You and I are going to talk a lot about this first pick and Caleb Williams. Yeah. And I always root for success, but I also root for a guy that demands respect in the building without having to demand it. And I got to see that in him still. I do.
You're the best, buddy. Love
Appreciate
you, buddy.
Brother. Love you too. Thanks.
All right. I'll tell you right now, it really doesn't get much better than Sean Salisbury. That's a tough act to follow, Ryan, in Sacktown. That is a tough act to follow, my friend.
Grant, what a freaking interesting conversation with you and Sean. I mean, there's comments about Caleb. I mean, he was screaming Caleb's praises, and Caleb went through it with some of the sideline stuff. But the way he was able to articulate that, that's a point of view you won't get anywhere else.
All right, so we go back to the game yesterday, and I thought the Chiefs' defensive stop after the Mahomes interception was absolutely critical. But we talk about the little things in a big game. The missed extra point changed everything around in that second half. It changed field position. It changed the way you play call because you only needed a field goal instead of a touchdown. It affected the entire game from that point forward.
Grant, do you remember as a kid, like growing up and you'd be coming around the corner and somebody jumps out at you and goes, boo, right? Yep. That's what it felt like yesterday when that extra point did not go in, because you realize Patrick Mahomes has the football and is within one possession. So that just, how does that not take this wind out of your sails?
It did. And it again, it's amazing how almost every single series, as far as the Chiefs were concerned, from that point forward, it altered what they needed to do and what they didn't have to do. And so it's pretty amazing. Listen, I thought the first half was kind of boring and lackluster. Sloppy. The game really picked up in the fourth quarter, and then obviously overtime in a Super Bowl doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I think everybody was a little bit confused at the overtime rules, even some of the players apparently, but it was a great second half. It was a fun second half. It was exactly what we thought a 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl could be with the talent that was on that field. I just think what it came down to, Grant, the Chiefs played so many more close games this year than the 49ers. And you give a team like that or Patrick Mahomes a ticket to the dance, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Listen, I'm older than you. We're different generations, but I thought the halftime was terrible. I thought it was one of the worst halftimes that I've seen in ever. I've watched them all. To me, that's one of the worst. You disagree?
I completely disagree.
I thought it was horrible. And everybody I was watching the game with thought it was horrible too.
I thought it was actually one of the more entertaining Super Bowl shows that over delivered in a Super Bowl show that you expected little from.
Interesting.
I thought it came off really well, considering Usher's last hit was, help me out, Grant.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you anything, but I thought it was horrible. I thought, when you look at halftime performances, I thought Prince was one of the best ever. I was at the Super Bowl when Madonna was there, and that was a phenomenal halftime. Prince stands out. Michael Jackson obviously was unbelievable. But for yesterday, I thought it was horrible. I thought it was absolutely terrible. We got a lot of people. Sea-Dog said it was horrible, Grant. Tony says agree, it was bad. Again, I'd love to get your reaction, since people do like to talk about the halftime, whether it's a yay or an A, good or a bad, same thing. But I thought it was awful. I couldn't even barely watch it.
Well, Napes, I think you got to reframe too the halftime show. You're never going to get, or in my opinion, you're not going to get obviously not Michael Jackson, but the big name people to do it. What's the point? It's a ton of extra stuff for them on a really
I
busy
disagree.
week.
I think the big people would jump out. I don't think there's very many artists in the world that would turn down the Super Bowl.
I don't think the biggest artists that we think about, they don't need to do the Super Bowl. They have social media. They have bigger platforms or platforms just as big.
I disagree with you. I disagree. It's ego. It's the largest audience annually in the United States, and there's not anything even close to it, including social media. So I disagree with you. I think artists would I'm sure maybe there has been an example of someone turning it down. I would believe that very few would turn it down.
Well, then why did Usher have to pull out Jermaine Dupri? And I know I'm throwing out names that a lot of people are probably not 100% on, but Jermaine Dupri, he hasn't done a lot in music in the last 20 years. I mean, you would think all those big names that Usher's associated with would jump to be on that stage with him, but she didn't. You get Alicia Keys. She's a big star on her own, but I would be interested to see how the demographics break down on that. And I'm not calling you old or whatever,
No,
but
well, you don't have to call me old. I started off the conversation by saying, "Hey, I'm old. I'm an older person than you. I'm a different generation." But it didn't resonate with me. I thought it was terrible. Terrible.
Fair. You know what? And that's the beauty of the Super Bowl halftime performance. At least we're talking about whether we liked it or we didn't. And we're not talking about a stupid wardrobe malfunction or something along those lines.
All right. Again, we really appreciate everybody's comments. All right, let's switch gears if you don't mind and talk about the Kings. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was the star of the game yesterday on both ends of the floor. And if you want to understand why Oklahoma City is first or second in the West and has been most of the year, it's because of him.
Yeah, and they've built that team centrally around him and his talents and his skill set. And to me yesterday, Grant, he put a space in between him and De'Aaron Fox.
No
the
question.
way that he bothered De'Aaron Fox with his length, and De'Aaron's a long guy himself, so that's not even really something to point out there. But De'Aaron, it shows the pressure that's bugging the Kings when when teams pressure the Kings. It just forces them to turn the ball over. It doesn't help that Oklahoma City does it the best out of anybody in the NBA.
Well, I want to say this: if the Kings lose to Phoenix tomorrow, they're in a lot of trouble heading into the break because they're going to lose the following night in Denver, and in my opinion, and they have now lost 3 of 4. That would be losing 5 of 6 going into the break. So I think tomorrow is a huge game for a variety of reasons. First of all, Phoenix is right in your neighborhood. You're right there pretty much with the same record.
Bingo.
That's first and foremost. And the fact that you got Denver the next night on a back-to-back after you just spanked them. If you don't think that Michael Malone is going to have his Nuggets ready to play and they're one of the best home court teams in the NBA, I don't see the Kings winning that game. I could see them getting embarrassed in that game. Tomorrow is a huge game. You could find yourself all the way in 8th or 9th heading into the All-Star break.
If you're lucky. If you lose both of those games, depending on how things fall around you. I mean, Phoenix won 3 of 4. You look at the way Sabonis is playing, gets his 17th triple-double yesterday. You would expect that he would have a dominant night. Phoenix is very bad on the glass, very bad defending the paint. Most of their talent's on the perimeter, as we know. So really, this is a call to De'Aaron Fox. This is the time this team needs him to step up. In the last 11 games, he's been a negative 0.01, which is kind of astounding for him with how much he plays. But here's the bigger thing. He's only scoring 21 points per game.
Way down.
And you've got Davion Mitchell, who's playing amazing basketball. He was a plus 23 yesterday. He's giving it's not making the shots. It's the way he's pushing the tempo at times. And he's giving Mike Brown something different. So De'Aaron has to show up in these next 2 games to avoid what you just mentioned.
Right now, if you're a Kings fan, you will absolutely, without any ifs, ands, or buts about it, take a split in the next 2 games.
Let's go.
You're not even close. You don't even have to think about it. You're taking a split in the next 2 games.
No doubt. You can write the Thunder off. I thought the Kings competed. I have no problem with how the Kings competed as a whole. Keegan Murray continues to be the biggest story to me, besides Sabonis of this season, taking a bigger step in his second year than De'Aaron Fox did. Hands down. Keegan's doing it both ways.
All right. So Phoenix, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I'm with you.
So.
Phoenix is 5th right now. Okay. You're even in the loss column with them with 22 losses. So, the Kings are 7th in the West right now. If they lose the next 2 games, they will go into the All-Star break with 24 losses. That would be, if Dallas wins out before the All-Star break, that would put the Kings in 8th place going into the All-Star break. Okay? And let me tell you, anyone that is not familiar with how the NBA playoffs work, it's kind of maybe you forgot how they changed the system. 1 through 6, you're guaranteed to be in the playoffs. 7, 8, 9, 10, it's a play-in tournament. And don't look now, but the Golden State Warriors have turned things around. They've won 4 in a row and 7 of 10. And this West is you don't think every game is important? Huh. It could be the difference of 2 or 3 spots right now.
You might as well, Kings fans, gear up, and the Kings too, because the playoffs basically start tomorrow. And I'm not talking about like what you're going to do getting into a first round or winning a first round series. I'm talking about just even making the play-in. This is going to be a brutal stretch for this team, and they're going to have to get their best from everybody. But like I was trying to say a second ago, I think a lot of guys are playing good basketball right now. They just need to put it together as a whole.
Here's what's disappointing about where the Kings are at right now. Okay. The teams that they've lost to, like they've lost to Houston twice below them. They lost to Portland once. Okay. They've lost to Golden State, who's behind them twice. Okay. Charlotte, I'm going to go to the East now. All right. So they lost to Detroit, the worst team in the league. They lost to Charlotte. Okay. I mean, it's unbelievable the games that they have lost to, the bad teams. And yeah, you're going to lose to a bad team every now and then. That's the NBA. But boy, you look at those teams that they've just kind of like melted against, because you're 8 games over 500, which is really good, Ryan, but it's not good this year in the West because all the teams are playing well because they're relatively healthy.
Exactly right, Grant. The teams have gotten better. They've stayed healthy. Phoenix, that's part of the reason they've won 3 of 4 right now.
Yep.
So the Kings absolutely have to be able to bring their A game the rest of the way, because I look at it this way. We can look at the bad losses, but you could also make the same argument that the Kings have had some really good wins this year. They beat the Thunder twice. They've beat the Timberwolves, first loss at home for the Timberwolves. So just as bad as the losses are, the wins have been as good.
All right, the Pelicans are in Memphis tonight, so you got to figure they're going to win. The Nuggets and the Bucks in Milwaukee, toss-up game. All right, the Mavericks are hosting the Wizards, so you got to figure they're going to win. The Warriors and the Jazz in Utah will be a good game. And then you have Minnesota at the Clippers, which is going to be a big game. So the standings are going to change tonight after the game. And then, of course, the Kings and the Suns tomorrow. So we'll see. Bad news on Sasha Vezenkov. You know, he re-injured that ankle in practice, and he's going to be out quite a while.
Another couple of weeks, at least is what they're looking at, along with Chris Duarte. So that backup role, Grant, what's Mike Brown going to do? And maybe I pose this question to you. It seems like there's an awkward spot in that rotation that he doesn't know whether to fill it with a forward or a bigger guard. How do you see him filling it with Sasha out?
Better figure it out real quickly, because you don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time to experiment right now. I think more than anything, you need more consistent minutes from your starters, and that means Harrison Barnes, and that means Kevin Huerter. And, you know, your starters to me now, when you have your reserves, that Duarte and, you know, Vezenkov, and first of all, Sasha hasn't been playing a lot, but I think he was just starting to get back in the rotation after missing the stretch of games.
Yep.
But I'm going to look at your starters. I think Harrison Barnes has got to be more consistent, which is going to take some pressure off the bench at that position.
No doubt. And the bench has been performing awesome. Let's not take anything away from them. They have been a bright spot for this team.
Agreed.
But yeah, Harrison actually had a very good stretch in the second quarter yesterday that kind of settled this team down. He got to the rim. So you see, Grant, throughout the game, when the Kings clearly draw up plays for Harrison, Keegan, I would like to see him do it more often. I get you're not going to do a set play every play, but it's refreshing.
Okay, so we can talk about all of these things, and there's some truth to everything that you're saying, and I think that I'm saying on our chat line. The Sacramento Kings' success or lack thereof depends on one player and one player only. And I hate to say this, but it's De'Aaron Fox. And you saw what happened in Denver against Denver the other night, and then you saw what happened yesterday, okay? And it's pretty much a repetitive pattern. When De'Aaron Fox plays at an A level, the Kings are right there to win almost all the games. Now, they don't win them all, but the point I'm trying to make is they're there. When he does not, this team has little chance of winning, particularly against the better teams. So to me, we can talk about who's going to play off the bench and this and that. It comes down to number 5. It comes down to your point guard.
No doubt. Look, I don't expect De'Aaron Fox to have 10 assists like he did against Denver.
Right.
But 5 assists against Oklahoma City is not going to cut it for this team, because you just simply don't have enough guys that can get a good first step and distribute like De'Aaron can.
All right. So tomorrow, pregame with Ryan, halftime, postgame as the Kings take on the Phoenix Suns, and then the very next night they're in Denver, and then it's the All-Star break. So, the last time Sacramento played Phoenix, we know what happened. They were up 22 points with 8 minutes and 45 seconds left, and somehow, some way they lost. So I don't know who's got more to, be pissed off about right now. The fact that the Kings blew that lead, or the fact that the Suns were that far behind and know they got lucky. I don't know what to expect tomorrow. Do you? I really don't.
I don't. I don't at this point. I mean, usually, Grant, we can get a reading one way or the other, or we get that feeling in our gut. I don't have one.
I don't
I
either.
just know they're either going to show up or it's going to be bad, and it's going to be closer to what you laid out at the start of the segment.
All right. So good stuff today on the show with Sean. Ryan, appreciate you. And to everyone else, don't forget tomorrow, all the Kings programming right here. So make it a good rest of your Monday. And thanks for watching. If you don't